Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. So it looks like sports are coming back to our televisions, to our cities, to a heart near you. And we need to talk about it, guys. It is time we really face the reality that not only are sports coming back, but they're coming back in a very unique way, and we have to get used to this idea of different avenues and different realities that we're going to be kind of going through. Where do we want to start off? It has to be Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball hitting the city, and there's been a rejuvenation in the city of Chicago with both the Cubs and the White Sox being on television. They are going against each other in the exhibition games, and it really started getting the blood pumping for a lot of different people. Now, obviously, if you've been listening to us here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves, we've been covering the UFC over on Fight Island and some of the cards over at the Apex Center, and we've been keeping our fingers to the pulse of the sports world. But now it is a major return for sports, and the NBA is coming back in just a few days after Major League Baseball. So they just came out with a report that they have 0 positive tests of COVID, so it looks like they're going to get to the beginning of their restart of the season. But in Major League Baseball, we have now the Toronto Blue Jays won't be playing in their home stadium in Toronto because they don't want travel from the United States to Canada, and that is from the Canadian government. And you guys know how I feel about this. We got to be honest. We got to keep it funky here. You can't have it both ways. You can't want to have a normal life and ignore COVID. And that's what we've done in this country. And I'm not here to judge anybody, but that's the reality is these numbers don't go down. The people that are in charge, the powers that be, will not allow this to move forward unless we all get on board and we pull the rope on the same direction. And the United States has not done that. So now we're in a point of baseball where we're 2 days away. As of this recording, we're 2.5 days away from the start of the season. And the Blue Jays don't know where they're playing. You have players who are still kind of worrying about testing. You have guys that have opted out. And then it gets to the point where you wonder if they're going to make it to the finish line. Because unlike other sports, specifically the NBA, even though they don't have a bubble, like they keep wanting to use that term, the fact remains is they have less people traveling because there is no travel. And there is less people per team, per organization when it comes to staffing. It becomes a totally different planet when it comes to the NFL. We'll get to that. But Major League Baseball has that disadvantage of having to travel. And we just found out that the state of New York will not let people in the stadiums to watch the Giants and the Jets. So what happens when you have some cities, if you have some cities that allow people into their stadiums? Are they at high risk of spreading COVID? I'm not going to pretend and sit here I'm a doctor, but I've done enough research. I've interviewed experts, and at this point, all I know is we are not certain. We just don't know how this is going to play out, except for the fact that there's going to be bumps along the road. And in Major League Baseball, the real question, do you get to the finish line? Can you crown a World Series champion? 60-game season. I know a lot of people aren't feeling that, but the fact remains is they're gonna get this in. There was a lot of bad blood between the players' organization and the owners, and it looks like even just right now when it comes to what's being presented to the media, we've moved past that. But I don't know what happens if a whole dugout tests positive for COVID. It's the traveling that's really tricky. I understand you can't have the same type of idea like the campus world, the bubble that the NBA is doing. And obviously what things like AEW and WWE did when it comes to sports entertainment and what the UFC is doing with the Apex Center. But it would have been interesting, even though they're hotspots, Arizona and Florida, the idea of maybe finding a few cities and making those the rotation of cities. That would have been an interesting way to go. But the fact that we're getting any baseball in its own right is pretty interesting. And then to see what goes on next year. with these rule changes that happened this year, and they obviously, everything reverts back if we have baseball next year. So as of right now, this coming up Thursday, we'll have baseball. The Washington Nationals, the New York Yankees will be on national television to end the night. And I will be joined by Paul Javari from Baseball Weekend Journal, and we will be breaking down and previewing the 2020 pandemic MLB season. If you have any questions, make sure you guys leave them on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram Mike Mercado Media, and on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Moving on really fast to the NFL, we saw a bunch of tweets from big name players talking about their concerns for COVID-19 testing. Peter King on the Dan Patrick Show mentioned that Richard Sherman says they should be testing every single day. I kind of agree. You need the testing. You need the information back. This is the one sport out of all the other sports that is going to have the toughest time getting to their championship. Take away all the stuff about winter and flu season and all that. Strictly what we're seeing right now. Over 100 people per organization, and especially when two teams play against each other. Physical contact, and there is no bubble. They are traveling to cities. We have this disconnect with athletes and with celebrities and with musicians and people who make a lot of money and people who have a lot of stature in our eyes or society's eyes. So you don't really connect with them when it comes to, if you're watching a UFC fight and somebody gets knocked out, you're watching it for your entertainment. And a lot of people believe, well, he's made that decision to get knocked out. I'm not going to be switching places with him and getting knocked out. I'm not in any immediate danger. The problem is now we are, because we all share the same supermarkets. We all share the same, laundromats, the same car washes, banks, all different, everyday, simple things we do in life. We all intertwine with each other. And unlike any other thing where we have this disconnect from an athlete, from different people, prominent people in society's eyes, that's gone. That veil doesn't exist. And what's really frustrating is the National Football League had all this time to figure something out. And we are about to see teams report to training camp, rookies, and they have no clue what's going on. You like to think that billionaires and business owners are smart, that they got there because of work ethic. The truth of the matter is, maybe at this point they're complacent. Maybe things are just so good that they don't move. Maybe Fat Cats is the real thing. But you had months. Guys, it is the end of July, and they have not figured this out. You would think that not only would they have a plan A, they would have a plan B. And I'm not saying anything is going to be perfect. And I'm not saying that they should have been prepared before any of this when it comes to a pandemic. But the fact of the matter is they've had all this time. March, April, May, June, all of July. They've seen other sports make mistakes and make their own kind of road to getting a restart going. And the NFL is about to drop the ball on this thing. You know more than any other sport, this is the one league that not only wants to move forward, they need it. And not in a financial way, not obviously with the TV contracts and all that, it's all viable, but the ego of the National Football League, the way that they carry themselves, the owners, they want to take full advantage of this. They want to be the kings of your television during the 2020 pandemic, during COVID-19 times. All of your social issues, your political thoughts can go pound some sand in the eyes of the National Football League. They'll be damned if they're not going to be on television. But with that mentality, you would think, with that much callous, they would have a plan. And again, in the same interview with Dan Patrick, Peter King mentioned that the Minnesota Vikings were showing off some technology they're using to kind of track this thing and monitor these things. Why is that not reported? Is it league-wide? What are you doing with testing? How many people are being tested? And this is a complicated issue, obviously, because we're having people who need the test in everyday life. But if we're strictly just staying in the sports world, don't cheap out on this. You do not get to cheap out on this. And I think that's what it feels like in the NFL, and it feels like incompetency that nobody and no one has not only at least came up with the plan, at the very least hasn't presented what the plan is going to be moving forward. Finally, before we get out of here, I think the other thing that I'm having a hard time coming to grips with is not having sports for this long. Obviously, with the UFC, I've been still kind of in touch with everything and just keeping myself busy and like that. This has been a time for a lot of people who've been able to get creative when it comes to their content. But I wonder how many people are getting used to life without sports. You know, sports was a placeholder. It was a soundtrack, a background music to a certain time of the year for you or your life or a moment. And I wonder how many people just got used to that not being around, have replaced that with something else. Obviously, there's going to be a huge return. I think NBC Sports Chicago mentioned the fact that they had their highest ratings in years between the Cubs and the Sox exhibition game on Sunday night. So I think their sports is going to be just fine. But there is going to be a portion of the fan who won't return. And that's just out of habit. They formed new habits. And I wonder what that number really is going to be. And I wonder if it's going to be substantial enough to actually put a dent into any type of monetary situation these leagues have moving forward. And how this affects deals moving forward. Since this pandemic, is streaming now the official way they're going to go all in moving forward with these new CBAs, these new TV deals? I'm fascinated to see what's the drop-off from people not returning after this when they get their sports back. Shout out to front of the show, Devin, who sends us this. AEW, WWE have been happening during this all, so I'm getting used to watching sports with no crowd again. And it's true, WWE and AEW started with no crowd. Then AEW got a crowd, so did WWE. Then they started wearing masks, so on and so forth. Yeah, they've had fans there. So yeah, I mean, you know, fans, I could get past things like that. I think it's weird when a lot of people just gravitate towards that, especially towards live sports. That's real. Like, it doesn't matter if there were 100,000 people or no people. You know, there have been some of the most intense games are at high school football stadiums that 50 people saw. You know, like, I think live real sports, it doesn't matter the crowd. A great crowd helps. You know, you're going to have the atmosphere and the energy will be out there. And the fan bases will be there, and social media will be hot. But compared to like WWE and AEW, where it's so necessary because it's theatrical. But the theater in sports is the sport. And the announcers being there, and like, I think it's just different. So as much as it's going to be weird and the built-in, piped-in crowd noise might be a little jarring at first, I think people are going to get past it. And, you know, I think just in general, having sports on television is going to be really big for a lot of people. But let me know your thoughts with sports coming back on your television. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves, YouTube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. Support us by buying our swag at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment wherever you get your favorite podcast, especially at iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. Don't forget, Paul Shivari joins us on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves. Wednesday, the show will be posted previewing and predicting the 2020 MLB season. Until then, take care of yourself. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.